What would happen if right now the Earth stopped spinning? Would we be thrown into space, crushed against mountains, or survive long enough to see what comes next? Every second, the planet moves at an absurd speed, and we do not even notice it. But what if, all of a sudden, that motion simply stopped? What would happen to the air, the oceans, and life itself? Today, we are going to discover what would really happen if the world suddenly stopped. Let us imagine that in a single second, the Earth's rotation stops completely, with no gradual slowdown, just an instant halt. But gravity keeps working, the atmosphere stays where it is, and somehow the planet does not break apart. In other words, the only thing that truly stops is the spin. That means everything not firmly attached to the Earth's crust would keep moving at the same speed the planet was rotating before. Buildings, trees, cars, people, entire oceans, all would be propelled by the planet's previous momentum. The air would still be moving at more than 1,600 kilometers per hour, even though the ground beneath it had stopped completely. Let us also assume that the Sun, the Moon, and the other planets continue their normal paths. In other words, the universe remains unchanged. Only the Earth decides to stop. There are no explosions, no supernatural disasters, only pure physics acting on a global scale. Now that the rules are defined, we can finally understand what would happen to the planet, to the oceans, and to everything living upon it when Earth's rotation comes to a complete stop. At the equator, Earth spins at more than 1,600 kilometers per hour. So if it stopped suddenly, the air, the oceans, and everything not solidly anchored would keep moving at that speed. Buildings? Gone. Entire cities would be swept from the surface in an instant. And the ocean? It would not stay still either. It would surge over the continents within seconds, creating waves hundreds of meters high. Imagine what would happen to the atmosphere. While the ground stops, the air still rushes around the planet like a wall of supersonic wind, tearing everything in its path. Forests would be flattened, deserts buried under moving sand, and coastal cities completely swallowed. It would be as if a hurricane covered the entire planet at once. But without Earth's rotation, the tidal cycles would become distorted and violent, pushing entire oceans from one side to the other, until balance was completely lost. When everything finally calmed down, the planet would no longer be the same. The map of Earth would be redrawn, with new deserts, new coastlines, and entire regions submerged. The first impact of the stop would be pure chaos, an instant of uncontrollable energy that would change the world forever. After the initial chaos fades, Earth would become a planet with 6 months of daylight and 6 months of night. One side would burn under constant sunlight, while the other would freeze in eternal darkness. Without the spin that distributes heat, climate balance would cease to exist. On one side, the ground would crack, the air would dry out, and the oceans would evaporate under scorching temperatures. On the other, absolute cold would create frozen seas and endless snowstorms. The atmosphere would shift, creating a violent boundary between heat and cold. This transition line, known as the twilight zone, would be the only place remotely habitable. In this region, the sun would appear forever stuck on the horizon, and the winds would be so intense they could tear mountains from the ground. The oceans would slowly migrate toward the poles, forming new coastlines and turning former continents into barren deserts. Regions that are tropical today would become sterile, and frozen areas could, for a brief time, shelter new forms of life. Animal and plant life, as we know it, would almost completely disappear. Only extremely resilient species, perhaps underground or aquatic, would manage to adapt. From this new balance, Earth would cease to be the blue planet and become a world divided between fire and ice. Humanity would not vanish. We would adapt. People would migrate to the twilight zone, a narrow strip between day and night where temperatures would be bearable. It would be a region of permanent contrasts, with an eternal sunset on one side and a dim, frozen horizon on the other. Cities would be built near the edge of light, with solar panels pointed toward the horizon and turbines harnessing the endless winds. Agriculture would need to be reinvented, with underground crops and energy systems designed for a world that never changes seasons. The clock would lose its meaning. There would be no more mornings, afternoons, or nights. Only a continuous time in which everyone lived under the same orange sky. Human culture would also transform. Art would celebrate the duality between fire and ice. And the idea of seeing a sunrise would become a distant memory from a spinning past. Storms would become part of daily life, and no one would be surprised by 200-kilometer-per-hour winds. But at least, no one would complain about Mondays anymore. After all, when time stops, every day is the same day. In the end, the planet would probably survive, only a bit flatter, warmer, and completely confused. The oceans would change address, mountains would overlook the sea, and old deserts could turn into beaches. It would be a new world map, drawn by forces beyond anyone's control. The good news is that there would be plenty of time to enjoy the view, since the sunset would last about 6 months. Tourism along the border between day and night would become popular, and perhaps sunrise would become the new New Year's Eve celebration. Some humans would try to adapt their routines. Others would blame the government, and someone would certainly create an app to predict where noon would happen. Of course, without rotation, life would be chaotic, unpredictable, and probably impossible across most of the planet. But if there is one species capable of finding a way through anything, it is ours. After all, if we can turn Mars into a fictional tourist destination, who's to say we could not find a way to live on a planet that forgot to spin? So maybe it is better to let Earth keep spinning as it is. After all, with everything that already goes wrong on this planet, the last thing we need is for it to decide to stop. From traffic to politics, we already have enough chaos in motion. And if the world truly stopped, the chaos would be complete. But at least the sunset would be spectacular, lasting for entire months. Maybe that would be the bright side. Plenty of time to enjoy the view while everything slowly falls apart. Better to let the planet keep doing what it does best. Keep spinning.